Hey guys, welcome back to the channel Meet Praneeth. So today we have a very special guest with us. We have Jocabed with us. She is the managing and founding attorney at Global Immigration Connection, and I think she was born and raised in Long Beach, California. And she's live from California right now. And today we have her to answer some of the very important questions and bust some myths that lie around EB-1. So welcome to the channel, Jocabed, and if you don't mind, and if you can give a little bit of introduction about yourself, what positions you have been holding, and I think you were an immigration officer at the USCIS as well. So awesome. So yeah, take the stage is all yours, and I'll just ask you questions that I've prepared, and probably if you can answer them, that would be helpful for the audience that will be watching this video, and probably have more questions for you in the future. So stage is all yours. Thank you.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Praneeth, for having me today. Such a privilege to be on your channel. I haven't been on YouTube on this platform before, so I'm really excited about it. And yeah, just a little bit about me. I know you said that I'm from Long Beach. Yes, I'm born and raised. I also have dual citizenship with Mexico. So a little bit about me. My family is from Guadalajara. So yeah, I know I get a lot of questions like, why is your name so unique? And so my name is spelled in the Spanish translation of the Bible. So it's a Hebrew name with the Spanish translation. So I get that question a lot, so I wanted to put it out there. And I do speak Spanish because I get that confusing look all the time, like whether I speak Spanish. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah, my background, my father was a pastor, so I got a Bible name growing up. So that is a little bit about me, and my journey towards immigration. It's something that I got like really passionate about like during high school and college, and I started interning and doing a lot of more like political activism during college. And so, I was involved in student government, in Mecha, and just that's, immigration was always a topic that I became very passionate about. And when I decided to go to law school, that was always my goal, was to be in immigration. But I always thought that I would end up just being more centered around the issues that involve the Latino community. And I thought that was going to be my path, but and I still am involved in that. But after law school, I became an immigration officer, and so being an insider, and I was placed in an area where I was doing O's and P's. So I was working with people with extraordinary abilities, and adjudicating those cases. And it was very interesting. Like it was the category that everybody wanted to do because of all the interesting people that you get to see. And that didn't work out for me working in government. And so I was just like, well, since I already have this knowledge and this information, let me start, doing it in the private practice. And so I started working at several firms, and started doing from doing O's and P's, I started doing EB-1s as well. Like the first thing that I was thrown into was RFEs for EB-1s. And so when I started looking at them, I was just like, well, this is O1A 2.0. That's what I started calling it. I started calling it O1A 2.0. I go, they're just a little bit more, so it's like, basically two different regulation, two different law regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And but it gets applied the same, just a little
Right.
bit more stricter. I saw it right off the bat, and I was like, I understand this completely. I understand this completely. And I saw it as just like, oh, well, I get this.
Right.
And so that's when I fell completely into doing EB-1s. And now I started, expanding, my client base to not only have mainly Latino clients, but also other clients that have this, need
Right.
to do EB-1s, because a lot of people, I keep on hearing a lot of stories that it's not just because they want a green card, but they need that green card to, expand their career. And I saw that there was a need there, and I was just like, well, might as well do them. I mean, might as well share that knowledge. And I still didn't, even though I never thought that I would actually use it in private practice, the opportunities just started coming up. And of course, I'm gonna go for it.
Great.
And and share that, and hopefully someone can benefit from that.
Yep, exactly. And I think one of the reasons to have you here on this channel is because all the people that mostly watch this channel are looking to get into EB-1, or at least try for EB-1. Because there was this myth lying around that people with only PhDs or academic profile can try for EB-1, which is not true. And when I started spreading this information that, well, there are other criteria that you can target and that can basically help you get to EB-1, then a lot of people got interested. And I think if you don't mind, I'll probably share your LinkedIn profile with everyone who is coming to me and asking some questions immigration related specific to EB-1. And if you can help them out, that would be really, really, really awesome. So with that, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is it seems to me that your specialty in immigration cases is O1 and EB-1 right now, right? You take those cases, right, a lot. So one of the questions that people ask me is related to that front is, if they get O1, how much or how possible it is for them to get EB-1? Like, is there a direct correlation between the two?
Well, there is a direct correlation. They're very similar, but they are more stricter. They are a whole new set of officers that are looking at things, in a completely different lens. And even though they're very similar, but there are cases where I saw, once I, dived into private practice, where they, whatever they got, whatever criteria they met, they were meeting them in at the EB-1A level as well, depending on the case.
Right.
I did hear some horror stories recently about someone who did get his O1A and, had to reapply for, EB-1 a couple of times, actually, because he got denied. But so I did hear about that case. But it is, once you can recycle the evidence, though. Right. Definitely.
That makes sense. And a very general question, and I think this is just to cater to the audience, that how feasible is EB-1? Like, it seems like that path that no one wants to take, because it seems impossible to cross the hurdles on the way. But like from you being an immigration attorney and handling cases from EB-1, the RFEs, like what would you like to say, like how feasible it is on a scale of 1 to 10? Like, if you work towards it, if you're ready to work towards, like, how feasible it is?
I get this question a lot, as far as people want me to come up with numbers and like percentages, and I'm like, I'm not very great at that. But what I can tell you is it's feasible. Like, if there's potential, it is feasible. Like, you can build up your profile. I think it is it's feasible in that sense, if you have a foundation. Right. Like, if you have a foundation for it, because I've had people who want to go for this. And I've had consultations where I have to kind of just stop them right away, and I look at their, whatever they submitted to me, and I'm like, oh wow, you don't have anything, and that's where I'm like, no, it'll probably take you years to build up this kind of profile. Right. But if you have a foundation already, where, let's say the person has a PhD. Right? Let's say it does. It doesn't mean, or just a master's, where they actually, attend conferences and they peer review, and they even if you have a master's, you actually can write scholarly articles. You don't have to have a PhD. It's just inherent in a PhD to do so. So you can meet those two categories. Right. And it's just, everything else, you got to kind of keep striving for. Like, maybe there's a membership that, you could qualify for. Yeah. And if, there's a membership you can qualify for, or you're going for an award that you want to go for in your career, it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily have a PhD, but what if there is an award that you want to compete in that's internationally recognized?
Right.
Then, that's something you can strive for, even for your own personal,
Right. Right.
self to improve your career.
Right.
And so that's when I feel like it's feasible
Mhm.
to go for the EB-1A when there's like some sort of foundation.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
At least, let's say there are three criteria you want to meet. At least if you have two in hand, you can try for the third one or see how you can basically fill in the gaps in the puzzle, right?
Fill in the gaps in the puzzle. Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect way of putting it. I like that. I think I'm going to steal that.
Sure, please.
I love it.
So
Yeah.
I think that leads to another question that I think this myth is still floating around. And is there any, like, from you being an officer at USCIS and taking a look at so many cases, do you think that there is still a trend that people only with PhD apply for EB-1? And if so, why that mentality is still around there? Like, what's stopping them from discovering EB-1?
Well, EB-1 is not, obviously it's arts, it's business,
Right.
it's athletics. So it's a lot more broader than that. I think we're focused here more on like the sciences,
Right.
because I think that's the audience there is. But there are athletes who don't have these qualifications and they're on there.
Right.
I mean, an athlete can't go for scholarly articles.
Yeah.
That's true. Like they can't go for that. But people with PhDs can, and or people who have masters and are involved in that kind of work. And I think that myth still floats around because it's more inherent. I think what I said is it's more inherent in a PhD. Like your program's already set up for you to do that way, to attend conferences and it's already set up that way. So it makes it, I guess, more feasible for them.
Right.
In that sense. But you got to understand that this category is a little bit broader than that.
Right.
In many ways.
And that also opens up the fact that people with non-academic backgrounds can also try for EB-1. It's just finding those right criteria and then finding evidences for those criteria, right? Right. Okay. And like, I think probably sessions like these would definitely help people break these myths. But anything that you would suggest to basically reach wider audience and tell them that, well, this is a myth. Don't go after this myth.
I think a myth that I keep on hearing is you need to have like a strong following on social media.
Exactly.
I constantly hear attorneys saying that, and I'm like, where did they get this crazy idea from?
Right.
I was like, that's not true.
Right.
True, you don't need to have a strong following because actually having a strong following matches none of the regulations.
True.
It matches none of the regulations, so I don't know where they get that idea from. And even I think the last YouTube video I did, somebody asked that question as well, and I'm like, no, like, where are they getting this idea from?
Right. I think people are looking for all the possible things that they can do to basically get to EB-1, and I think that's why these myths also pour in, and then people start believing in them, and then that doesn't lead them to anywhere. But I think that's why having sessions like these would definitely help people understand that, well, these are the 10 criteria and you have to be sticking to these, right? And I think that leads to a very hypothetical question for you. But generally, people with academic profiles, with publications, citations, they have an easier path towards EB-1. And the reason is that they can show that they have published research, they can show that people are citing their research, or they might have done peer reviews and stuff. But people with non-academic backgrounds, let's say if I'm a software engineer or a software developer, and I have 12 years of experience in the field, but I don't know where to start, right? And I have a lot of things that I have done, but I'm not sure how to gather them in one place and try for EB-1. So I'll put out some information for you, and then the question would be like, what criteria you think that person should go after to get towards applying EB-1? Like, successful petition is not the question here because that depends on the USCIS, but at least trying is very important. So let's say the profile would be, I'm a software developer, I have master's in computer science, I have 8 to 12 years of experience, and let's say I'm leading the software development efforts for a company A. And during that work or previous work, I also have some patents, like 1 or 2 patents, which I'm not the alone holder of that patent, but a team basically holds that patent, which I'm a part of. And then there's also some media attention for like news articles about the product that I have worked on along with the team. Let's say it could be a very simple toolbox that I have developed and it's being widely used, and there are media articles about it. And then in terms of critical role, I know I still just work as a lead developer, but I do not have a critical role. High salary, like let's say I have a median salary, which really is high, but I still can't prove it that it's the highest among all the peers, right? And finally, I in terms of peer review, I review the code of others, like in my team. And before it goes to production, like on GitHub, I go and see whether their code makes sense, whether it's doing the right thing, and then I push it to the production. So can I go for EB-1 with this profile?
The law school answer, it depends.
Right.
The law school answer, it depends, but I mean, I can break that down one by one. So
Perfect.
I want to start off with the most difficult category of all,
Right.
which is original contributions.
Right.
It is one of the most difficult categories to meet when you're doing an EB-1. And I think it's because there's a lot of like misapplication of the law. There's a lack of understanding on how that rule works. And it's just a difficult category to meet in general.
Right.
And so for a software developer, something you need to ask yourself whether your patent is, what's the major impact of your patent?
Right.
And it's actually it may seem very broad, original contribution in the sciences.
Right.
It may seem very broad, but it's actually a very intense way of layering that object and showing
Right.
that you have an original contribution. And I was having this conversation last night, actually, with somebody,
Oh,
and I was breaking it down for him, and he was just like, that's how it works. Like, that's how it works. And I'm like, yeah, very, very bright person.
right.
And I said, so who's using your, your design specifically, or, or whatever, the developer, what did he develop?
Mhm.
Is it only being used within the company? Because if it's only being used within that particular company he works for,
Mhm.
then that's not an original contribution.
True. True.
It's not, because it's not going beyond the walls of that company.
Exactly. Yep.
So it's not going beyond the walls of this company. So it becomes very weak evidence for that.
Mhm.
So the way you layer that evidence, it's like, number one, you have a patent. You've created something very original. You have a
Right.
good start.
Right.
But who's using it and how many people are using it? So is it maybe just that company, or maybe several companies are using it?
Mhm.
I know that I had a consultation with somebody who had like 7 patents.
Right. Wow.
And I thought that was amazing. I was like, you have 7, you have 7 things. And I was like, wow,
Right.
and so then that conversation shifts into what
Mhm.
companies are using it.
Exactly.
What companies are using it? How is it being used?
Right.
What audiences are benefiting from this?
Right.
And it just becomes question after question after question that I have to go through. And I think that's why I believe client communication is very important,
Yes.
because you just have to dig, and you have to dig on
Exactly.
finding out, well, what's the major impact? How is it making an impact as a whole?
Right.
As a
Totally.
whole. And that's a constant thing you see in RFEs, is
Yeah.
how are you making a contribution to software developers
Mm.
across the field.
Right. Right. Right.
And I think what a lot of people fail to understand is, well, who's using it, and how is this a contribution? How many is it? Is it not only benefiting companies, is it benefiting people as well?
Right. Right.
And who's using it? And so that's when you come up with the evidence of, okay, number one is patent. Number
Right.
2 is the contracts used to who's using it, I've seen things like, school districts using certain things that were made up by software developers, like school districts. Um, cities using it, systems within this, using some sort of system that somebody created, and, cities are using it, governments. I've seen people like, not only is it being used here, but somebody else in Ireland picked it up,
Right.
and that's showing that you're making like an impact at a
Cross.
national level and international level,
Yep.
and so that's why I wanted to, start with that one, because it's just, such a broad rule,
Right. Right.
but there's so many details involved that are not out there.
Exactly.
That are not out there. And so once we start breaking it down, because it's unique to
Right.
each person,
Exactly.
everybody's, whatever they came up with is
Yeah.
it's unique, and it's not I keep on constantly having to tell people, because I've done contract work for other attorneys,
Right.
not a one size fit all.
Exactly.
It's
Yep.
not, this category is not a one size fit all. You're
Right.
going to have to speak to the client, ask him. And I feel like that's a problem for a lot of firms, because it's not a one size fit all. And I know a lot of people who don't like this particular visa category because of that.
Exactly.
Um,
True.
it's taking the time to really understand what, for example, in our hypo right now is software developer, like what is the impact he's making as a whole. And obviously that's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of questioning, and
Right.
it's going to take a lot of gathering evidence for that, to
Exactly.
show that, because then after you get the impact, then that's when like expert letters come in.
Yep.
And then that's when somebody else is like vouching, like endorsing you and
Right.
telling, yep, yeah, this is not only private companies are using this across the field, but, people are using it,
Right.
and everyday consumers are using it as well,
Yep.
and stuff like that. So it's like, endorsement. So it's like a very, very intense rule as
Right.
well. It's a very intense rule. It's not a one size fits all.
Exactly.
So I
Right.
get that.
So,
And
so original contributions can be basically fit by, let's say, patents, right? And it depends on how whatever the patent is, how widely it's used, what impact it's creating on the national level or the international level. On like one follow up on that. So let's say the patent was granted to the whole team, right? Or a division where you were the part of that particular division or the team. Would that still count as original contribution?
yes, I would still count. I mean, there's always an officer. Like I said, this is such a subjective
Exactly.
category, because coming as an officer,
Right.
there is no consistency even with O's. There's no
Yeah.
consistency with EB-1s as well. I've seen RFEs that say like, I had a client who met this category with this kind of evidence, and then I had a similar evidence for another one, and that officer didn't like it.
Right.
So the fact that there's that inconsistency puts you in a place where someone can like it and someone else probably
True.
won't like it.
True. And one question that comes to me, saying that let's say there's a design or a patent or some software that's being developed, and let's say it's being used by the United States government for certain purposes. It could be, let's say, some kind of design that the company built and they are implementing for other tasks. Would that kind of implementation by the government be useful for EB-1, showing that whatever we developed or whatever I developed is being used by the government to, well, do this.
Mhm.
So would that also count somewhere in the totality of EB-1?
Yes, it would count.
Okay.
It would.
Perfect. And the other question related to this is a lot of people ask, let's say, in academic profile, one can go and let's say they're publishing papers or research papers. They can always review research, right? Because the editors might come back to them and say, well, why don't you have published a lot of papers in this domain? Can you review some for me or for the journals? And you do that. So that counts as peer review and it satisfies that criteria. But let's say if I'm not from the academic background, and as I mentioned, let's say if I review the work of my peers, right, within
Mhm.
the company, and after my review only that work goes to production or to the ultimate code development that's being done, would that be considered for peer review? Can we prove that using, let's say, letters from my manager or peers or higher ups?
I did see an RFE once where they didn't like something that was inherent to your job
Okay.
as you. So I have seen that as well.
Mhm.
So it's something to watch out for.
Right.
So that's why I always say it's good for you to have friends at conferences, which is a common thing to have because, attending conferences gives you a time to peer review, gives you time to peer review. And I would say that it actually makes you better to peer review something,
Right.
even in your field when you look at somebody else's work.
Exactly.
So it is beneficial. So there are going to be officers who probably don't like that kind of evidence. So it's something to watch out for and something to think about
Right.
that something is inherent to your job to do. It's, could or could not count.
Makes sense. Makes sense. That's a great point because a lot of people have this doubt in their mind, and like I also saw some people talking about this on different forums that exactly the same thing. It can count, or sometimes people, the officer might just reject it outright, saying that, well, this doesn't fit the criteria.
Mhm.
Awesome. That's great. And I think moving into the same uh, non-academic profile, the other thing that a lot of people face is, let's say they don't have master's degree because an advanced degree is required to file EB-1, right? So can people with bachelor's and some full-time experience explore EB-1? I read somewhere on USCIS that if you have 5 years of full-time experience in the same field with bachelor's, you can apply. But I want, because you're an attorney, I want your opinion on that. Is that
Yeah,
feasible?
like I said, like I said, it's not a one size fit all. I would
Right,
have to look at somebody's background and see how much experience they have to see if they match those
right,
criteria or not.
right,
Because some people can have a lot of experience, but they maybe only meet one category out of that
right,
experience.
right,
Some people have like 20 years of experience,
right. But
and they
with
can have,
bachelor's,
yeah.
but with
But
ba
with a bachelor's, I wouldn't, yeah, with a bachelor's. I'm not
right,
sure if they'd qualify
okay,
just by knowing just a bachelor's degree. I wouldn't know that because I don't know what other category they meet. Maybe you have
right,
a bachelor's and you have this major award.
right,
I don't know that, I
yeah,
don't know that. So it's hard for me to tell on that one.
right. That makes sense.
Mhm.
And I think let's also move to the a little bit of academic profile because a lot of your viewers that watch the channel are kind of in two categories, like non-academic and academic. And this question comes up a lot, like how many papers and how many citations should I have to qualify for EB-1? Even though there is no magic number set by USCIS, but still we get this question and people are still frustrated about what is the right number. So if you
I
can,
think that maybe you should look at the size of your field.
right.
You
Okay.
can look into that. Like I always tell people, well, let's do a little bit more research. And
Mm,
sometimes I'm sitting with people and I was like, well, I'm doing research as I'm talking to you, trying to figure that out for you.
right.
And what is the size of your, if there's people in your, like, who are I guess the big names in your field?
Right.
And if you compare yourself to them, like where are you close to their citations?
Right.
That's a good way of measuring that kind of number. So
Right.
if you can come up with those comparisons, then maybe you can see, okay, then that I'm at the level of this big name person.
Right.
We have almost the same amount of numbers.
Mm,
So maybe if he's a little bit higher, I'm still like in that same range.
right.
And then
Right.
we can say what the citation number is because it's, like I said, not a magic number.
Yeah. True. True. And I think also there, like for example, people ask me like when you applied, how many citations you had. So for example, let's say I think I was close to 600 citations or so when I applied. So I said I think every profile is different, and I think USCIS just doesn't look at the numbers. They also look at what the total what your profile tells about you, right, and how your work and your let's say contributions match with the EB ones of the ultimate aim, which basically have to show that you have that extraordinary ability, and whatever you work is helping United States do something better in that field, right? So what are your thoughts on the totality? Because there are two ways of looking at this. One is you fulfill the criteria, and then the officers will see or do a qualitative analysis and see whether those criteria take you to that extraordinary ability category, right? So how
Mhm.
does that pan out like, and what are your thoughts on this?
Oh, yes. So, I usually, when I work with people, I'll take the criteria one by one with them.
Mhm.
I don't do like I won't give them like a number, but I'll see, hey, you're weak in this area.
Right.
You're weak in this area. This looks like a hybrid, or this language, because in this category, one word matters. And if you don't address it, you can get an RFE,
Exactly.
and a lot of it is, the way you present the evidence as well.
Right.
So what I do is like, okay, I won't give you, but when it comes to the totality, I'm like, okay, well, you can possibly meet six, but there's like two weak ones
Right.
here.
Yep.
And based on the totality, you could, there's a possibility you could get approved.
Right.
And
Right.
or they might see it as that one thing is just going to hinder you, or that one word is going to like make you get an RFE all across the board, because you just never know who you're going to get. That's why I believe in the refile, and I have it, in my contract to refile, because sometimes you don't know who you're going to get.
Right.
And sometimes I think something's really good, but another person might not think it's really good.
Right.
And so that's how I take totality, is like I'll piece it one by one, and then I'll at the end we'll be like, okay, well, this is what you have strong. You have this three strong, or maybe you have two weak, and then based on that, we're gonna take the next step on totality and say, there is this chance, there
Right.
is this chance, and then there's that chance that
Right.
could affect, depending on the field.
Yep. Yep. That makes sense. Yeah, exactly. If someone is coming from an athletic background, they might have a national award or international award, and that's just enough for them to get into EB-1. So that
It's true, because sometimes at most, I've had athletes where they only make four.
right.
They only make four of those, and that doesn't mean they're not going to get approved.
Right. True.
They may have high salary and like
Yep.
maybe one award, and but they have like lots of publications, because they're popular, and
Right.
made in a lot of major things, and that doesn't mean they're not going to get approved, because they do have all these other things going on.
True. True. Yeah, and I think for this session, I know we are already almost at time, so I'll have you. And one thing that I want to ask everyone to do is do put in the comments what is the next thing you want to hear. Like, do you want to have a webinar, or again, a second part of this video where we go a little bit deeper into the other questions? So I think this introductory video is very helpful. And what is the best way to reach to you? Like, for example, if anyone has questions after watching this and they want to really try EB-1, work with you on their case, what's the best way to reach out to you? Like through LinkedIn, through your website? What would you recommend?
Anywhere. I've had both. I've had people contact me on LinkedIn. I've had people contact me through my website, and I'm pretty responsive.
Awesome.
I've even
that I can definitely say.
I've actually had people reach out to me on Facebook and on Instagram too, and they're not exactly like business; they're my personal ones. Where they start, and I don't mind talking to people,
Right.
and I will be open for that. So whichever way you want to contact me is perfectly fine.
Right. I will put the your LinkedIn profile and also your company's website in the email, sorry, in the description, so that people can click that and reach out to you. And I can also forward some requests to you if they seem to be looking for EB-1 attorney, and I think probably you can guide them in the right direction. And I
Yes.
think with that, one last question, or not a question, not a question, it's a request. Any words of wisdom for people who are watching, like who are looking forward to EB-1? Let's say they're stuck in EB-2 and they know specifically in India and China, the wait is very huge, like it's very long.
It's like every week I get somebody who's stuck in EB2 and they want to find a way to get out every week. And I think my words of wisdom would be, if you have a foundation, because obviously this category is not for everybody, but if you have it, why not go for it? And even if it's not at this moment, you can try for it maybe 6 months from now.
Right.
And I always tell people, like, I'm not this kind of person who's going to like force you. I'm going to be very honest with you and tell you whether you meet something or not. And I'll be like, well, if you don't meet it, you just don't meet it, but maybe you can in the future. So like they say, there's there's no failure in trying unless you don't try at all.
Exactly.
So I'm right here with you. I'm right here with you to, like, if you have that possibility, then I'm the person for you.
That makes sense. No, I think I always tell people that without trying, no one can quantify what the failure would be, right? So if you try, you fail, that, well, this didn't work out. Let's look for another option. But if you don't try, you will never be able to look or perceive what the failure would be or what the success would be, right? And if you succeed, that's the best you can hope for. So that's really sounds amazing. And I think you already and when we were talking, you mentioned that you can reapply for EB-1 even if you get denied the first time. So I think that should not be a problem reapplying. So perfect. I think with that, I would really like to thank you for taking out the time. I know you have a very busy schedule, and out of that, taking out time to meet and to talk about this is really, really appreciable. So thank you so much. And have a wonderful weekend, everyone. And we'll see you in the next video pretty soon.